I had walked past Blueprint about 3 times at a local media exchange in my town, and I honestly had no intention of picking it up anytime soon. And I'll be honest, that was due to my own ignorance about the game. I thought I had read somewhere that Blueprint was an overly complicated game that required a manual and a lot of time to get enjoyment from, but I think I had this confused with a different one. But when a longtime viewer requested that I look at Blueprint and attempted to explain it to me, well, I'll be totally honest, I felt vindicated in my previous thought. It's a hard game to explain to people around you, but luckily it's actually not as difficult as it sounds. With that being the case, is Blueprint a victim of its own unique design and ideas to the extent that it's getting overlooked today? Or did it deserve to be passed up repeatedly in that media exchange? Let's find out. Blueprint was originally designed by the famous Stamper brothers and was released on the Atari 5200 by CBS Electronics back in the year of 1983. There wasn't a ton of different ways to experience this one when compared to its contemporaries, but it was also available to play in the arcades, on the 2600, and on the Commodore 64. And I can't even begin to imagine how it was pulled off on the 2600. Maybe we'll have to find out one day. The title screen is about as basic as it comes, but when you're done selecting your options, you start at what appears to be a neighborhood surrounded by tall hedges. At the bottom of the screen, you have a smiley dude in a hat, something called the Blueprint, a start button, and the words Bomb Pit and Fast Run Time. At the top of the screen, there's 4 or so potted plants, and what appears to be a woman being chased by a monster, maybe a hunchback. It can be a little difficult to wrap your head around what's going on, but it becomes clear as soon as you move the joystick that you're playing as the smiley hat dude. You can enter houses and drag out different pieces and sometimes bombs. If you take the pieces to the bottom of the screen, they snap into place on the Blueprint, and the bomb blows you up fairly quickly. My first time trying this game, I was quickly blown up, killed by falling potted plants, and staring at the main menu again in no time. So what exactly is going on here? I'll do my best to explain it, but it's actually not as complicated as it first seemed to me. So the top of the screen has the lovely Daisy damsel being chased by an ogre. Daisy is your sweetheart, and you're attempting to rescue her. Occasionally, they knock down the potted plants as the ogre chases her, and you have to avoid these or else you lose a life. And the plants track your movement and seem to come to life in order to get you. It's weird, but, well, you know, video game logic and stuff. So, what are you doing then? Well, you're taking Smiley Hat Dude into each house in search of parts for your overly complicated and completely ridiculous device that you're going to use to save Miss Daisy. Each house has a part for this device, except for 2. The 2 houses that don't have bombs, and bombs are also placed in houses you've already searched, so you'll want to remember where you've been and where you haven't. Whether you find an item or a bomb, they'll follow you until you place the part on the Blueprint or until you dispose of the bomb. Now you're asking, how do you dispose of bombs? Well, remember the word bomb pit I mentioned in the beginning? That's where you deposit those bad boys, and you need to be quick because they blow up fairly quickly. Occasionally a monster will climb out of the bomb pit and attempt to destroy your machine, so you'll need to nab him and throw him back in the pit if you see him come out. So you explore all the houses, and you have to start avoiding Fuzzy Wuzzy. And yes, that's its real name. You'll avoid him from level 3 and beyond. And he's just an annoying enemy that blocks your path and kills you. Once you have all the parts in place, you head over to the button in the lower left corner of the screen and turn on your contraption. You use this thing as a sort of tank, I guess, as you lob cannonballs up towards Daisy and the ogre. Once you hit the ogre, you start all over again as things get progressively quicker and more difficult. Okay, so it took a long time to explain, but when you're playing it, it's really not that hard to understand. The game can be intimidating to learn, but it's well worth it as it's actually pretty fun. I wish you had some recourse against Fuzzy Wuzzy, as he sometimes blocks your path for an eternity, and there seems to be nothing you can do but waste time and lose your sweetheart to the ogre. What a bummer. But outside of that, the game is surprisingly balanced and fun, and graphically it's a step up from most things we were used to on the 2600. Blueprint really shows off how well more complicated games and ideas could work with better graphical power. I shudder to think of what it must look like on the 2600. While the parts of the machine look like mostly nonsensical things, everything else is pretty good looking. The people have well-defined features, the houses look like houses, and everything else is bright and enjoyable to stare at. There is even a cute little interlude a la Pac-Man that plays after every other level that is simple, but helps with the sense of progression. Sound-wise, there is a nice little background loop that plays, along with a little tune that plays at the beginning of the game and after deaths. The songs and music are a little repetitive, but overall they're nicely done, and remind me something like you'd find in Donkey Kong. The alarms that play kill the audio, however, and there are a lot of them. When the ogre gets close to your sweetheart, a loud obnoxious alarm plays. when you find a bomb, a lower but equally obnoxious alarm plays. And when the monster crawls out of the bomb pit, again, an alarm plays that will irritate you until you get to him. Heck, the sound of the potted plant monster things bouncing around is a bit too abrasive too, at least in my opinion. So overall, the sound is the biggest ding against this one. Well, that and the repetition of the gameplay. As I said, once I got a hang of the game, I found it pretty enjoyable for a while. But after a little bit of time, the thought of building the machine again just stopped being appealing. I think the game is mostly well done, but the inclusion of the impossible to pass Fuzzy Wuzzy and the lack of different blueprints and gadgets to make really sinks the replayability. And I know, this game is an early arcade game and we should cut it some slack, but it still doesn't change the fact that by level 6, I was honestly done with it. I came back to it a few days later to gather more video for this review, and again, I had fun for about 30 to 45 minutes, but by the end, I was honestly sick of Blueprint. But take that with a grain of salt, as I guess you could say the same for many older arcade games. Yet personally, I don't get that feeling with some of them. But let's break it all down in the completely original and innovative Atari Network's pros and cons section of the video. For pros, I think the colorful graphics look good for the time, and the gameplay is much better than I initially thought. Building the contraption is pretty rewarding, and I think the developers did a good job utilizing the space on the screen for different things. It's a cool idea to build this machine and use it as a weapon. Very unique overall. However, this game can be intimidating to learn, and can become repetitive and boring after some time. There are several different audio alarms that just kill the sound in this game. An old Fuzzy Wuzzy feels like an impossible brick wall that kills your progress unfairly. When taking all this into consideration, I think it's fair to give Blueprint for the Atari 5200 Super System 3 rebuilt CX52 controllers out of 5. It's a good, unique game that mostly plays well. It has a few flaws, but those don't kill the experience. If you're getting tired of the same old arcade games and want something else to play for 45 minutes or so, then this will probably fit the bill nicely. Oh, and I want to address our review scale real quick. 1 on the scale is piping hot garbage. 2 means the game's not recommended. 3 means it is recommended. 4 is excellent, and 5 is the mark of a perfect game. When talking to Vinny, he seemed to think that 3 was a bad score to give a game, and I just don't agree. See, when I do my scores, I figure that 5 is nearly an unreachable peak. The scores 4 through 3 means that the game is pretty good, and 2 and 1 means it's pretty bad. So I just wanted to have that stated somewhere, and I'll try to remember to throw it in the description as a reminder. And thanks for watching my review on Blueprint. And don't forget, stay classy, Atarians.